Yes, I will speak slowly, and I have sent some endnotes and bibliographies to some people around because they're missing from the text in the book. I took very seriously the charge of the conference to think about how does Mauss enable us to think about a contemporary problem. And so I've chosen a case study after conflict, post-conflict restoration of social services in Papua New Guinea. The instance is one that occurs between 1988 and the present in the island region of Papua New Guinea, where a mine has been stopped in its production by the local residents because they are not satisfied with the delivery of state services there. The history is interesting, and I will come to that in a minute. I take this case as a very interesting one because it allows us to do something provocatively. If Mauss, in The Gift, looked at several examples of obligation from across the Pacific in order to think a bit and make some suggestions about how one might deliver social services in France, then perhaps we can talk about how people in Papua New Guinea in the Pacific are discussing the delivery of social services to think more successfully about the character of obligations. So it is a provocation in this case study. It interests me as a Maussian project because I think that Mauss is more interested in practical philosophy, and that his charge to the social anthropologist and to the sociologist is to explore consciousness in its concrete forms. And so I've presented ethnography, a discussion of the way in which obligation is lived. Now, the case requires a little background. In Papua New Guinea, which became an independent state in 1975, the state was new. People accepted the proposal that there should be a state on the grounds that it would provide them with social services. A legitimate state, therefore, provided for its citizens with social services such as education, healthcare, roads. This was funded by the exploitation of the natural resources of Papua New Guinea, principally mineral resources, and the Bougainville mine is perhaps the most famous case of mineral exploitation in Papua New Guinea because it has drawn international attention. That mine was jointly owned by Bougainvillean Copper, an independent company, the Papua New Guinean state as 50% owner, and it provided the funds for the civil service, the bureaucracy, and the delivery of social services. In 1988, the heavy machinery of the mine was destroyed by local residents because they felt that there was inequality between the delivery of services at the national capital and in the center of Papua New Guinea as opposed to their own receipt, as opposed to their own enjoyment of them. In 1992, Amnesty International investigated the case as civil war had persisted through those years, and in 1994, a UN visiting mission explored went on a fact-finding mission in order to discuss with people what was the nature of the conflict, and made recommendations that some sort of peace should be won. In 1997, the Papua New Guinean state agreed to restore social services. Up between 1988 and 1997, the state had withdrawn social services from Bougainville, and they had embargoed trade of the island with the rest of the world. So it was not possible to live in Bougainville and be connected to the rest of the world at all, either as a citizen who received social services or as an independent economic business person who sought to trade in the rest of the world. In 1997, that period of embargo ended, and Papua New Guineans restored social services to the island of Bougainville. This was done in the following way. Papua New Guinean social servants, school teachers, nurses, doctors, secondary school inspectors traveled to Bougainville in order to rebuild clinics, schools, and roads. They failed. They failed because the resources of the state were insufficient for the reconstruction of the services that had previously been there. The failure lies both in some ambivalence on the part of the state about the international charge that they should do this, and also in the fact that the crush of neoliberal reform had dried up the financial resources of the state itself. So they were poor and could not restore the services so easily. The results of the failure of the delivery of social services in 1997, in the face of the world's charge, in the face of international demands that Papua New Guinea do this, was embarrassing to the Papua New Guinean state and embarrassing to those minor civil servants who were charged with the job of doing it. They were requested by Papua New Guinean parents, by the Bougainvillean parents of that location, to carry the children back to their homes so that the children who were sometimes ill received health care, sometimes bright but unable to fulfill their promise would receive education. And so minor civil servants, peacekeepers, adopted children and took them to their home provinces.